There are 7 sequencers on the OP-1 that you get to by pressing Shift and the sequencer button. The first one on the list is Arpeggio, but don't let the name fool you. There are extra features that have a lot of idea generation possibilities. You hit the sequencer button again for the control page. Across the top you can see 4 pieces of information that correspond to the 4 encoders. And then you hold Shift, and down at the bottom you see 4 pieces of information there that the colors correspond with the encoders. Typically the orange one will be a hold, so I'll turn that on. The first piece of information there is the time signature. The second one, the gold encoder, is trigger mode, and based on that mode the OP-1 can add notes to your sequence in various creative ways. The gray encoder is trigger pattern, which can skip steps in the arpeggio, creating different rhythms. And if I hold Shift, we have note length in blue. Gold sets the type, which can be octave up, octave up and down, adding the 7, 9, and -5, adding the 2, 4, 5, 7, 9. And that little pause symbol there means that steps in this one here, the third one over, see that? How those dots are changing? Well, the ones that aren't visible will be silent, so there'll be a little rest inserted there. And then if this pause, where the pause symbol is there, is put to that arrow symbol, then these dots at the top will simply be skipped, whichever note that is. And I'll show you how that works, and I'll demo it. And then the orange encoder with the Shift will control swing, which right now, being at 50%, is no swing. So it's on hold. I'll put some notes in. Got my SH-101 style patch in there. Set it to each note, getting additions. And I'll set it to skip some notes. So this is the endless sequencer, and it's a lot like the SH-101 sequencer, but it has a lot of extra added functionality to it. You enter the sequence just by holding down Shift, and then you can use the arrows to add rests to it. So and then you just play it. Now you can hold Shift and play it in different directions. So you play it forward like it is now. This is random. Then it has reverse. You can apply a pattern to the sequence. And over there on the left, see the different patterns that are emerging there for it. Let me play a few of them. So let me get a beat going here. So I've got something here that is a little like Endless. It does some of the things that Endless does. And it's called Jog. It was made by Fours for Max for Live. And I've entered the same type of sequence in there. So let's see what happens with this. And it has some of those patterns. So not nearly the functionality of Endless, of course, but if you wanted to get something like that SH-101 style sequencing in there with the possibility of forward and reverse and a few of these Euclidean type of patterns that you could throw in there, and you didn't have the OP-1, then Fours' product Jog here might be an option for you. This is the finger sequencer. The concept is that each key has a separate sequence on it, and you can play two together, and the second one will be in sync, and this makes a unique and unexpected sequence. It's a great creative tool. When finger is used for drums, it appears as two monkeys playing drums. And it's a similar concept to the one with the synthesizer, that you have different sequences on each key, and by combining two sequences together, you can get unexpected results for your drums. So let me get a little synthesizer going. So you can see how you have all these creative possibilities there of a third sequence that you didn't expect. You know, I really like the creative possibilities and the things I was coming up with the finger. So I've set up something that does a couple of the functions of the finger here in Ableton. So what I have are two MIDI tracks, and I put MIDI clips and put little sequences in each of the MIDI clips. Both of those two MIDI tracks are being sent into the same VST. And so even with it running, you could swap out to another VST, and each MIDI track would still be feeding into a third track, which is the VST. So then I'm going to turn on MIDI map, and I'll be able to map these clips, these MIDI clips. So I'm going to click on the first MIDI clip, and then here on my key step I'm going to hit the F. Then I'm going to go down and hit F sharp and then G. And then I'm going to go to the next column, and I'm going to hit A sharp, and B. And then I'm going to map the stop buttons. I'm going to have the stop button for the first column be C, and a stop button for the second column be D. Now I can have control over turning those on and off. So now I can hit the F, for instance, and I can come in with a second sequence. And change it, and it'll always be I can turn them off. Come up with some interesting things, just like with the finger. This is hold, and the concept of this one is that you can set a break point at which the notes will be held. So if I have it right here up to C, then these notes will be held, but these up here won't. And then you can transpose the held note using the gray encoder. But you could also have a chord that's transposed. Let me include this C in the breakpoint. And then you can transpose that chord. And you can also clear the notes by pressing them again or pushing in on the orange encoder. The gold encoder will change mono to poly. This one is called Pattern. It reminds you of a conventional pattern sequencer. And you might expect the cells there. It's like cells in a table. And you might expect the triggers to be in the table, but it's not. It's along those vertical lines. You use the blue encoder to move the cursor across, and placing notes is very much like endless, where you hold shift down and then you can place your notes on there. And you can also move the cursor ahead using the arrows. You erase by having the shift held down and moving the cursor back over it. Gold is swing, gray is pattern length. You can use gold to offset the notes as it's playing, and that's where you get into the creative and unexpected things. And with shift, orange will adjust your play mode: forward, forward and back, reverse. This is sketch, and it can be used like an Etch-a-Sketch. So you can draw your own custom lines on there, and then you can shake it like you used to do with the Etch-a-Sketch, and the sand inside would erase your drawing. You could start over. It's that type of thing. In general, it seems to me that the horizontals are being played. So if I make a stair-step shape in there, it's playing all the horizontal lines. Then you can use the other two to move the sketch without making drawings. I can shake it up. This is the Tombola sequencer. The concept is that you drop balls of a specific note inside and they sound when hitting the surface. You can adjust the speed of the hexagon and the weight of the balls. And then you release the balls by turning the gray encoder. Let's put in a minor 7th chord with a 9 in the bass. So that's all the sequencers on the OP-1 field, and I think what you saw there was that the emphasis was on creativity and getting unexpected results, new twists on some old ideas. But in general, the OP-1 is the only game in town. There's nothing that competes with it. And part of that is due to the fact that it has an analog tape simulation in it that I can go into in another video. Something that might be in the neighborhood is something like the MC707. But again, it's missing the analog tape simulation, which is a big part of it. And I could see two companies getting together, maybe 1010 with their little mixer recorder thing. If they could put an analog tape simulation in that, get with Roland on the synthesizer end, I think it would be a million times better than the OP-1. Join me over on my Patreon. There's lots of downloads. I'm going to start coming up with some OP-1 patches, and those will be coming up on my Patreon. But more importantly, get on there and discuss with me synthesizers. I always enjoy doing that. See you in the next video.